a 63-year-old retired American police officer, Bill Johnson, married 22-year-old African dancer Amara. But soon after the wedding, constant arguments erupted over cultural differences, especially clashing sexual beliefs, fueling a dangerously intense relationship. Bill Johnson was a traditional man with a brilliant career in law enforcement, but retirement left him in a dull routine until the day he saw Amara performing in a nearby city. Her long legs glowed like polished chocolate in the sunlight, and her sinuous hips seemed to taunt his loneliness. He was instantly captivated. Amara, from Nigeria, was 22, bursting with energy. Dance was her soul, and to her, sex was an open expression rather than a limitation. She was drawn to Bill Johnson's maturity and steadiness, feeling a unique sense of safety with the white-haired older man. So these two people from completely separate worlds married, drawing curious stares from onlookers. On their wedding day, Bill Johnson wore a crisp suit, while Amara dazzled in colorful African attire, showing her slim waist and earning hushed remarks from guests. Some said Bill Johnson had found treasure. Others whispered he was robbing the cradle, while some even suspected the African bride was chasing a green card. Bill ignored them all, only thinking of holding her young body that night and feeling his masculinity revived. But trouble began on their wedding night. Bill wanted to take things slow, light candles, put on music, savor every moment. But Amara tore off her clothes and leapt on him like a wild leopard. Overwhelmed, he gasped for her to stop, complaining she was acting too savage, like someone with no upbringing. Amara's eyes widened as she fired back. "Isn't sex meant to be free? Why are you a block of wood?" That was their first explosive fight. Bill felt humiliated. Amara felt insulted. As days turned to weeks, the arguments bled from the bedroom to the living room. Bill liked to sip coffee and read his newspaper in the morning, while Amara blasted African drum beats, dancing at full volume, rattling his eardrums. He demanded she dress more modestly instead of constantly revealing her arms and legs. But she insisted on tight tops and shorts, defending it as her freedom. Furious, Bill smashed a cup, calling her disrespectful, while Amara shot back that he was a boring old man crushing her spirit. Neighbors started gossiping, predicting the mismatched couple would soon collapse. Someone even secretly filmed Amara dancing and posted it online under the title, "Neighbor's Exotic Dance," which drew filthy comments. Bill saw it and felt his blood pressure spike, seething with shame. Yet he couldn't let go. Whenever Amara reached for him at night, her heat made him powerless to resist. Sex was both their glue and their ticking time bomb. One night, after a few drinks, Bill tried to imitate Amara's energetic African-style moves in bed, but twisted his back awkwardly. Amara laughed so hard that Bill, humiliated, slapped her in rage. She fled to the bedroom crying, locking herself inside while he sat alone chain-smoking all night. The next morning, Amara, with a bruised face, said she wanted to return to Nigeria. Bill dropped to his knees, begging her not to leave, weeping that he was old and couldn't survive without her. Amara's heart softened, and she stayed. But a heavy shadow fell over them. She began to doubt whether this was truly love or just Bill trying to chain down her wings. Their quarrels turned more vicious, with their cultural differences cutting deep like a knife. Bill insisted she learn to cook American comfort food, blend into his world, and even suggested having a child to keep her close. Amara felt suffocated, longing to dance freely on the streets, not be trapped in a kitchen. She secretly started performing in bars, wearing fiery costumes, and saving money to one day escape. When Bill discovered this, he was livid. He followed her to a bar and saw her dancing, surrounded by young, cheering men, Enraged, he dragged her home, where they had a massive fight. Amara screamed hysterically, "You only married me to use my body. You never really loved me at all." Bill Johnson was stunned. He wanted to refute it, but found himself speechless. Sex became their outlet for frustration, but it also became increasingly twisted in time. Amara deliberately wore a revealing dance outfit at home and danced, looking provocatively at Bill Johnson, saying, "Didn't you say I was wild? Come on." Bill Johnson gritted his teeth and pounced on her. They tore at each other like wild beasts. Afterward, they were both exhausted, lying on the bed, panting. Neither speaking at that moment, they both realized this marriage was no longer love, but a game of mutual torment. Neighborly gossip grew worse. Some said Amara was hooking up with a young bar owner. Others said Bill Johnson was seeing a masseuse for release. Bill Johnson started suspecting Amara of infidelity. Amara also felt Bill Johnson's gaze becoming more and more sinister, like he was monitoring her. The conflict finally erupted in public. It was the community festival that day, and Amara was invited to perform an African dance. She wore a tight leopard print outfit and danced with captivating charm. The audience below applauded loudly. Bill Johnson, however, stood in the crowd with a dark face. Suddenly, he rushed onto the stage and grabbed her, yelling, "Have you no shame?" Amara shook him off and danced even more vigorously in front of everyone, her waist twisting like a snake, her eyes full of defiance. The crowd exploded. Some cheered, others cursed Bill Johnson for not controlling his wife. At that moment, Bill Johnson felt utterly finished. He turned and left, leaving Amara alone on stage, dancing drenched in sweat. After that day, their relationship dropped to freezing point. Amara moved to sleep in the living room. Bill Johnson suffered sleepless nights, staring at the ceiling, wondering where this marriage had gone wrong. He started going through her phone, finding chat records with the bar owner. Although there was no concrete evidence of infidelity, the ambiguous tone pierced his heart like a knife. He wanted a divorce, but whenever he thought of her dancing legs and her passion at night, he couldn't bring himself to do it. Amara was also struggling. She wanted to leave, but Bill Johnson's tears and occasional moments of tenderness swayed her. She began to question if she had truly loved this man, or if she had just been captivated by his persistence. Bill Johnson and Amara's marriage after the community festival fiasco was like being thrown into a pot of boiling oil, surface calm, hid undercurrents, ready to explode at any moment. After Amara moved to the living room, Bill Johnson's days became harder to bear every night. Listening to her turning over, he couldn't help but imagine her young body lying on the sofa, her curves faintly visible in the moonlight. He started having insomnia, smoking more heavily than before, staring blankly at videos of her dancing during the day, but not daring to approach her at night, fearing another argument. But the more he suppressed it, the more that desire grew like wild grass. Several times he even secretly stood by the living room door, watching her sleeping with a bare leg exposed. His heart pounding against his ribs, Amara wasn't doing much better. She moved to the living room out of spite. But in the dead of night, she would also think of Bill Johnson, his rough but warm hands. Remember how he looked when he first clumsily held her to dance? She hated his possessiveness, but couldn't bear his occasional vulnerability. She started deliberately provoking him, like strutting around the house in a tight spaghetti strap dress, pretending to casually bend down to pick something up, exposing a deep cleavage, watching his gaze fixate but not daring to move. She enjoyed this sense of control. But after each provocation, she felt like a clown performing a play. No one understood. Sex became their most subtle weapon. Both connecting and destroying them. One night, Bill Johnson had some whiskey and mustered the courage to walk into the living room. His voice, "Amara, let's talk properly." Amara leaned back on the sofa wearing a translucent nightgown. Legs crossed her eyes, challenging. "Talk about what? How you'll control me or how you'll sleep with me?" Her words sent Bill Johnson's blood rushing. He pushed her onto the sofa and tore at her clothes. She didn't resist. instead laughing and biting his ear, whispering, "This is the real you, old man." That night they were like two trapped beasts, the sofa groaned. Sweat mixed with the smell of alcohol. Gasps filled the air all night afterward. Bill Johnson held her and cried, saying he was old and afraid she would run away. Amara didn't speak, just gently, stroked his white hair, her heart even more troubled. This passionate encounter didn't solve their problems. Instead, it deepened the cracks. The next day, Bill Johnson proposed that Amara quit her bar job and be a proper wife at home. He even suggested they try to build a more stable, conventional life together, praying they would grow old together. Amara scoffed. "Do you think I'm a pet to be locked in a cage for you to look at?" She slammed the door and rushed straight to the bar. That night, she danced more wildly than ever, sweat flying onto the floor as if venting all her frustrations. The bar owner was a man in his early 30s, tall and handsome after she finished dancing. He offered her a drink and smiled. "A woman like you shouldn't be tied down by that old man." Amara didn't take the drink, just stared at him for a moment, then turned and left. She knew AJ was interested in her, but she hadn't decided whether to cross that line. Bill Johnson wasn't idle either. He started following Amara after discovering she was getting closer to AJ. Jealousy burned fiercely in his mind. He looked through her phone's chat records and saw messages like, "You look so sexy dancing from AJ." He was so angry, he almost smashed the phone. He found an old colleague to investigate AJ and discovered he was a playboy who changed women faster than clothes. The more Bill Johnson thought about it, the more afraid he became. Thinking if he was cheated on, at his age he'd have nowhere to hide his face. He decided to strike first. Went to the bar to confront AJ, but was dragged out by the security guards, utterly humiliated. When Amara found out, she yelled furiously on the phone, "Are you ever going to stop? How does my dancing bother you?" Arguing became a daily routine, yet neither of them mentioned divorce, as if waiting to see who would break. First, Bill Johnson started trying various ways to please her. He learned to make a dish she missed from home and bought her an African-style dress. But Amara just said coldly, "Do you think this can tie me down?" She went to the bar more and more often, and her interactions with AJ became more ambiguous. Once AJ, slightly drunk, put his arm around her waist when she pushed him away. She wasn't as firm at that moment. Bill Johnson's face flashed in her mind, but her body didn't move. She began to question if she truly wanted freedom, or if she just wanted to provoke Bill Johnson to prove she still had choices. Sex became their last bond, yet it increasingly felt like a ritual. The conflict completely erupted in an accident. It was Amara's birthday that day. Bill Johnson specially took time off, bought a cake and a bouquet of flowers, wanting to give her a surprise. But when he returned home, Amara wasn't there. A note was left on the table. "I went to the bar. Don't wait for me, Bill." Johnson trembled with rage. He drove to the bar and saw Amara drinking with AJ in a corner. AJ's hand resting on her thigh, he rushed over and punched AJ in the face. The bar immediately descended into chaos. Amara screamed and pulled him away. AJ, holding his nose, cursed him for being crazy. In the confusion, Amara cried out, "What do you want from me? I'm not your slave." Bill Johnson stood frozen, looking at her tear-streaked face, suddenly feeling like a joke. After that night, Amara moved back into the bedroom. But an invisible wall stood between them. She no longer provoked him, and he no longer asked where she went. But this silent treatment was more suffocating than arguments. Bill Johnson started drinking heavily, sitting on the balcony, smoking every day. Recalling their early married days, unable to understand how they had reached this point. Amara danced even harder at the bar, wanting to shake off all her emotions. Her relationship with AJ grew closer several times. She came home late at night, carrying the smell of alcohol and men's perfume, Bill. Johnson smelled it, but didn't ask. He was afraid he would hear the answer. He didn't want people in the community started gossiping widely. Some said Amara had indeed cheated, others said Bill Johnson was preparing for divorce, And some even claimed Bill Johnson had found a young masseuse for revenge. Hearing these things, Amara smashed a cup in anger. But she didn't confront Bill Johnson, just silently danced at home, trying to vent her frustration through her movements. Bill Johnson sat on the balcony smoking all day occasionally, watching her dance with a complex look in his eyes. Bill Johnson and Amara's marriage in the Cold War was precarious, like a broken ship drifting in a storm, ready to sink at any moment. Bill Johnson no longer asked where she went, and Amara no longer explained her whereabouts. They were like strangers living under the same roof, silent with each other. Yet unable to leave one another, Bill Johnson drank more and more, a hint of defeat in his eyes. He started looking through old photos of himself in his youth. Those days of vigor in his police uniform seemed like a past life. He looked at his own face full of wrinkles in the mirror, then thought of Amara's youthful face, a pang of sorrow in his heart. He knew he was old, but he still couldn't help but want to hold on to her, even if it was just the warmth of her body. Amara wasn't having it easy either. She got closer and closer to AJ. That man always handed her a drink after she finished dancing. His eyes filled with naked desire one time as the bar was closing. AJ took her hand and led her backstage, whispering, "Leave that old man, come with me, I can give you the freedom you want." Amara looked at his young face and muscular arms, her heart pounding. She pushed him away and said, "Let me think about it." But every night when she came home, she would toss and turn in bed, her mind filled with the image of Bill Johnson crying drunk while hugging a pillow. She began to doubt if she really wanted to leave, or if she just wanted to use AJ to provoke Bill Johnson to prove she still had the right to choose sex, became their last link. Yet it felt more and more like a ritual. Late one night, Amara returned from the bar, carrying a faint scent of perfume. Bill Johnson didn't ask, just silently walked to her side and unbuttoned her coat. She didn't refuse. Neither said a word. They just intertwined on the living room floor. He bit her shoulder. She grabbed his hair. Gasps mixed with sweat as if speaking the unspoken words with their bodies. Afterwards, Amara leaned against his chest and whispered, "Do you still love me?" Bill Johnson was silent for a moment, then said harshly, "I don't know, but I can't let you go." At that moment, Amara's tears fell onto his chest. She suddenly felt that maybe she also couldn't let go of this old man. But this brief tenderness couldn't save their cracks. The next day, Amara still went to the bar, and Bill Johnson still drank. Days felt trapped in a loop, until one day, AJ publicly kissed Amara at the bar. She froze for a few seconds and didn't push him away. That scene was captured by one of Bill Johnson's old colleagues and sent to his phone bill. Johnson looked at the photo, his hands trembling. The wine glass fell and shattered on the floor. He rushed to the bar and saw Amara drinking and chatting with AJ. AJ's hand still resting on her thigh. He didn't make a scene, just stood at the doorway, looked at her, and turned to leave. There was no anger in his eyes, only an unspeakable weariness. Amara saw his retreating back, and her heart suddenly tightened when she chased out he had already driven away. After that day, Bill Johnson didn't come home. Amara called him, but he didn't answer. She started to panic, searching every diner and park he usually went to, finally finding him in a small motel. He lay on the bed reeking of alcohol, seeing her. He just gave a bitter smile. "Why are you here? Go back to your young stud." Amara pounced on him and cried, saying she never really wanted to leave. Just that she was angry. He controlled her too much. Bill Johnson pushed her away and said coldly, "I controlled you because I was afraid you'd run away. But you ran anyway." Amara was stunned. She wanted to explain, but the words caught in her throat. She knew that kiss had hurt Bill Johnson's heart, and any more explanation would be like rubbing salt in the wound. They returned home in a stalemate. But the atmosphere was worse than before. Amara no longer went to the bar, and Bill Johnson no longer drank. But the distance between them was like a chasm They couldn't cross more and more. Rumors spread in the community. Some said Amara had indeed cheated. Others said Bill Johnson was preparing for divorce, and some even claimed Bill Johnson had found a young masseuse for revenge. Hearing these things, Amara smashed a cup in anger. But she didn't confront Bill Johnson, just silently danced at home, trying to vent her frustration through her movements. Bill Johnson sat on the balcony, smoking all day occasionally, watching her dance with a complex look in his eyes. The turning point came unexpectedly. It was Bill Johnson's birthday that day. Amara hesitated repeatedly, but eventually made his favorite meatloaf and even performed a dance for him. She wore the African dress he had given her, twisting her waist, her eyes unusually gentle. Bill Johnson looked at her, his eyes red, and said hororously, "What are you doing tormenting me?" Amara walked over and hugged him, whispering, "I don't want to leave anymore. I want to try to make things work with you." Bill Johnson was stunned for a long time before he trembled and hugged her back. At that moment, he felt as if he had recovered something he had lost for half his life. But the good times didn't last. They tried to reconcile, but found the cracks were too deep. Amara no longer went to the bar. But she still danced at home. Looking at her twisting body, Bill Johnson would always remember. AJ's kiss and jealousy and suspicion would resurface. He started checking her phone, searching her bag, even secretly, watching her expression while she was asleep in the middle of the night. Amara discovered this, and they had a huge fight. "Why don't you believe me? I stayed." "What else do you want?" Bill Johnson yelled back. "How can I believe you? I saw you kiss that kid." The argument erupted again, fiercer than ever. Amara slammed the door and ran out. Bill Johnson chased to the doorway, but had no strength to run further. Amara ran back to the bar. AJ saw her crying like a child and hugged her to comfort her. She didn't refuse, even slept in his arms that night. But when she woke up, she pushed him away and said, "I can't go with you. I still can't let him go." AJ sneered. "It's not him you can't let go of. It's your own guilt." Amara didn't say anything and went home. She saw Bill Johnson sitting on the sofa, having waited all night, his eyes terribly dark. She walked over wanting to hug him, but he dodged, saying softly, "You should leave, I'm tired." Amara cried and begged him not to make her go. Bill Johnson just shook his head. "I'm not making you go, I just can't keep you finally." Amara packed her things and left. Leaving Bill Johnson alone in the empty house, she didn't return to Nigeria. Nor did she stay with AJ. Instead, she moved to another city and continued dancing. Bill Johnson never looked for her again. Occasionally, when he saw her performance on television, he would stop and watch for a while. Then quietly turn it off. He started drinking coffee and reading the newspaper alone again. His life as stagnant as a pool of still water, neighbors gradually forgot their story, only occasionally mentioning the age-mismatched couple sighing, cultural differences. After all, a forced union won't end well. The story ends here. Neither Bill Johnson nor Amara won, and neither lost. They loved and hated with all their might, only to finally let go. Marriage was like a wild dance. No matter how fiercely they moved, it eventually had to end. The two walked their separate paths, carrying their wounds, neither knowing if they would feel a flicker of emotion, remembering each other years later.